This is a story about love, healing, and finding light after a storm. A gray cat named Leo watches over his human as she goes through a difficult divorce. Together, they face sadness, loneliness, and slowly discover warmth, hope, and happiness again. Listen and let this touching story also help you improve your English. My name is Leo, and I am a cat. My fur is soft and gray, my tail is long, and my paws move silently on the floor. I live in a small apartment with a woman I love very much. She is my human, my family, my home. Life was simple before everything changed. She would wake up, make coffee, and I would sit on the windowsill watching birds. Sometimes her husband was there too. He was not unkind to me, but he was not really warm either. He often looked away, busy with his phone or his own thoughts. Still, I thought this was our world, the three of us. A world of morning light, of quiet evenings, of the smell of books and the sound of music. I did not know that a storm was coming. Cats can feel when something is wrong, but even I did not expect how quickly the air in our home would grow heavy. This is the story of how my human's heart broke, how she cried, how she found herself again, and how I stayed beside her through it all. At first, the change was small. I noticed that their voices were not soft anymore. They spoke less, and when they did, the words came fast, sharp, like claws in the air. I would sit under the table, my ears moving, trying to understand. My human would sigh a lot. She looked tired, even in the morning. She stopped singing when she cooked, and her hands shook sometimes when she poured her tea. The man, her husband, often left the apartment early and came back late. When he was home, he stared at the TV. They no longer laughed together. I tried to make her smile. I would rub my head against her leg, climb into her lap, and purr. Sometimes it worked. She would stroke me and whisper, "Oh, Leo, what would I do without you?" But the sadness in her eyes stayed. The air in our home grew heavy. I could feel it in every room, in every corner. Something was breaking, and I knew our world would not stay the same. One night, their voices rose higher than ever before. I hid under the sofa, my tail wrapped tight around me. I heard angry words, doors closing hard, footsteps going back and forth. My human's face was red, her eyes wet, but she tried to stay strong. The man packed a bag. I sat in the hallway watching. He walked past me, not even looking down. The door opened wide, then shut with a loud sound. After that, the silence was heavy, like a blanket pressing on my chest. My human stood still for a long time. Then she sat on the floor, put her head in her hands, and cried. I ran to her and pressed my body against her knees. My purr was loud, shaking my whole chest, but her sobs were louder. That night, we curled up together in bed. The other side of the bed was empty, cold. She whispered into my fur, "It's just us now, Leo." And I knew she was right. The days after he left were quiet, too quiet. My human did not cook much. Plates stayed empty on the table, and sometimes she only drank tea. She often sat by the window, staring at the street below, her face pale and sad. I followed her everywhere. When she lay in bed too long, I curled up at her feet. When she sat on the sofa, I climbed onto her lap. My purring filled the silence, but still, the apartment felt colder. She stopped meeting friends. The phone would ring, but she did not answer. Sometimes she scrolled on her phone, sometimes she just hugged her knees and whispered, Why? I did not understand the words, but I understood the pain. At night, I heard her crying when she thought no one listened. But I listened. I always listened. And though I am just a cat, I wanted her to know she was not alone. One morning, something was different. My human got out of bed earlier than usual. Her eyes were still tired, but she opened the curtains wide and let the sun inside. The light touched her face, and for the first time in many days, I saw a small smile. She made coffee, real breakfast, and even gave me a piece of cheese. "We can't stay sad forever, right, Leo?" she said softly. I meowed as if to answer, "Please." She started cleaning the apartment. The floor was washed, the books were placed neatly, the bed was made. With every move, the heavy air grew lighter. I followed her from room to room, proud of her. That evening, she put on music again. Not loud, but enough to fill the space. I jumped on the sofa beside her, and she stroked me slowly. Her eyes still carried sadness, but I also saw something new there, strength, like a small flame starting to burn. Day by day, little things changed. My human started going outside more often. At first, it was just short walks. She would come back with fresh air in her hair and a softer look in her eyes. Sometimes she carried flowers from the market, and the smell filled our home. She also began cooking again. The smell of soup, bread, and roasted vegetables warmed the rooms. I always sat nearby, waiting for a small bite. Cooking made her hum again, not always, but sometimes, and that sound was better than silence. She even laughed once, while watching a funny video on her phone. It was not a big laugh, just a small one, but it made my ears stand tall. Laughter felt like sunshine returning after a storm. At night, she still cried sometimes, but the tears were quieter now. And when she fell asleep, I lay close to her heart. I felt it beating stronger than before. One afternoon, the doorbell rang. My human hesitated, but then opened the door. A woman stood there, smiling gently and holding a bag of food. It was her old friend. I remembered her scent from before, when life was easier. At first, my human's eyes filled with tears, but the friend hugged her tightly. "I'm here," the friend whispered. They sat together in the kitchen, drinking tea. I jumped on a chair and listened. The voices were softer now, not sharp like before. They talked for a long time. Sometimes my human cried, sometimes she even smiled. The friend laughed warmly and touched her hand. I saw color return to my human's face, little by little. After the friend left, the apartment did not feel so empty anymore. My human sat on the sofa and stroked me. "Maybe I'll be okay, Leo," she said. I purred loudly because I already knew she would. Slowly, our days began to find shape again. In the mornings, she opened the windows wide, letting the fresh air in. She made coffee, fed me, and sometimes even played soft music while getting ready. The silence was no longer heavy, it was calm. She started working more, sitting at her desk with her laptop. I often curled up beside it, my tail brushing her arm when she needed a break. She would smile, scratch behind my ears, and whisper, "Thank you, Leo." In the evenings, she walked outside. Sometimes she returned with fruit, sometimes with a book. The smell of fresh bread began to fill the kitchen again. Our home slowly became warm, alive, a place of peace. Of course, she still had sad moments. Some nights she sat by the window, quiet and lost in thought. But the difference was clear, she no longer drowned in her sadness. She was learning to swim above it. Not every day was easy. One morning, my human woke up with a heavy heart. The sunlight did not reach her, and her steps were slow. She barely touched her coffee and sat in silence, staring at nothing. I jumped onto the bed and rubbed my head against her arm. She sighed and whispered, "It's too much sometimes, Leo." I purred, pressing close, hoping my warmth would help. But the sadness clung to her like a shadow. She spent the day sitting quietly, lost in thoughts about what was lost. The apartment felt empty again, even with me beside her. I tried to nudge her, to play, to make her smile. Sometimes she responded, sometimes she didn't. At night, she finally cried. Her tears were loud and long, but I stayed with her, laying my head on her lap. When she finally fell asleep, I curled around her, keeping watch. I knew these waves would come, but I also knew we could face them together. A few days later, something changed. My human woke up and moved with a little more energy. She brewed coffee and even hummed a soft tune while pouring it. I sat on the windowsill, watching her, my tail flicking with hope. She looked out the window, then turned to me. "You know, Leo, maybe today can be a good day," she said with a small laugh. And then, it happened. A real smile, not forced, not quick, but warm and bright. I blinked slowly, my cat way of saying I'm happy too. She went for a short walk, and when she came back, she carried a small bag of fresh bread and some flowers. The smell of flowers and bread made the apartment feel alive. I rubbed against her legs, purring, because the home felt like home again. That evening, she sat on the sofa with me on her lap, stroking my fur. "I think I can smile again, Leo," she whispered. And for the first time in a long time, I believed her. Days passed, and little joys returned. My human started going to the park, sitting under trees and watching people walk by. She smiled at strangers, laughed at birds, and sometimes even spoke to me as if sharing secrets with the whole world. She cooked more, experimenting with new recipes. The smell of garlic, herbs, and warm bread filled every corner. I sat beside her, hoping for a tiny bite, and she always gave me one with a laugh. Evenings became cozy again. She read books, sometimes aloud, while I stretched on the sofa. Music played softly, and sometimes she danced a little, just holding my paw for fun. Her energy grew slowly but surely. The apartment felt warm, safe, and full of life again. And I, her quiet gray cat, felt proud. My human was healing, and we were healing together. One sunny morning, the doorbell rang again. My human opened it and found a neighbor smiling warmly. She introduced herself, holding a small basket of cookies. My human invited her in. They sat at the kitchen table, talking and laughing. I jumped on the sofa beside my human, my tail flicking with curiosity. The neighbor's laughter was soft but genuine, and I could see my human's face light up. They shared stories, tea, and small jokes. For the first time in months, my human didn't look sad. She leaned back, relaxed, and even stroked my fur while talking. When the neighbor left, my human looked at me and whispered, "Maybe it's time to make new friends, Leo." I purred, knowing this was a good sign. The world was opening again, slowly but surely, and we were ready. One morning, the sun came through the window like a golden blanket. My human stretched, yawned, and laughed softly at nothing in particular. She looked alive, not just moving through the day, but really living it. She made breakfast, humming a tune. I sat on the counter, watching her with wide eyes. She even gave me extra cheese, laughing when I licked my paws. The apartment smelled of warmth and fresh bread. Later, she opened the windows wider than ever and let the breeze in. The curtains danced, and I chased them, leaping and spinning. She clapped her hands, smiling, and it felt like we were playing together for the first time in months. That day, I realized something important. The sadness was not gone, but it had shrunk. Light had returned, soft and bright, filling the corners of our home. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely happy to be a cat in this world. One evening, my human sat on the sofa with a blanket around her shoulders. I jumped into her lap, curling up and purring. She stroked my fur slowly, her eyes soft and calm. The apartment felt warm, not just from the heater, but from something deeper. She looked around at the flowers, the clean kitchen, the sunlight fading outside. She smiled and whispered, "We did it, Leo. We are okay now." I purred louder as if saying, "Yes, we are." Later, she cooked a small dinner, humming happily. The smell filled every room. We ate together, me with my tiny portion, her with her plate. The world felt safe, simple, and full of love. That night, we slept side by side. I felt her breathing steady, calm, and peaceful. I had watched her through the storm, through tears and loneliness, and now I felt her happiness radiating. Life was soft again, warm and bright, and I was grateful to be part of it. Now, life is calm and full of small joys. My human wakes up with a smile most days. She waters her flowers, brews coffee, and sometimes talks to me while she reads. I stretch on the windowsill, watching the world outside, but always come back to her side. We walk together, laugh together, and sometimes sit in silence, feeling safe and warm. She has learned to live again, to love herself and the little moments. And I, her quiet gray cat, have learned how strong she can be. Some days are still hard, but we face them together. Her heart is lighter, her steps are stronger, and the apartment feels like home. I curl up beside her at night, my purr soft and steady. Life is bright again. We are together. We are happy. And for a cat like me, that is everything.